On our wedding day, the company was exposed for tax evasion. To protect our little family, I turned myself in, taking Kyle Fuller's place in prison. 10 years later, I was released, only to discover that Kyle Fuller had another family with many children. Furious, I demanded to know why he had betrayed me. He said dismissively, to upholding the family lineage. My eyes instantly welled up, and we had a huge fight. My husband's parents tried to appease me, saying, even if Kyle Fuller has children with someone else, you're still the matriarch of the Fuller family. Be understanding, focus on your life, that's more important than anything. Even my parents advised me, during the 10 years you were in prison, Kyle Fuller took care of us. The Fuller family has been 3 generations of only sons, they couldn't wait for you and risk ending the lineage. Besides, you have a criminal record now. Kyle Fuller not divorcing you is already a great kindness. Clenching my fists, biting my lip hard, I forced back tears and asked him, what do you plan to do about our relationship? Kyle Fuller casually sipped his tea. As long as you behave, I won't divorce you, but the Fuller Corporation will be inherited by Ryan and his 5 siblings. In the future, they will respect you. Tears streamed down my face. I had finally given up completely. I don't need it. Kyle Fuller, let's get a divorce. I turned and contacted the boss lady I knew in prison. Divorce? I don't agree. The most agitated was my father, who slapped me across the face. How could I have raised such a petty brat? With Kyle Fuller's wealth, having multiple partners would be perfectly normal in ancient times. Now he's not divorcing you, he just had a few kids, what are you making such a fuss about? My younger brother also stood up abruptly. Sis, what nonsense are you talking about? Our wedding, buying a house and a car were all paid for by my brother-in-law. So what if he has a few kids? Is it really that big of a deal? If you mind, just have one with him later. It's not like we can't afford it. Family bonds run deep, and my family didn't hesitate to sacrifice me for their own benefit. Kyle Fuller, who hadn't even looked at me since I got out, finally raised his head. There was a hint of panic in his eyes. Chelsea Moore, don't overthink it. You are my only wife. A chill washed over me. I gave a self-deprecating smile and confronted him. Do you remember what you said before I went to prison? Taken aback by the question, Kyle Fuller paused for a moment. Then his face flushed red, and he frowned unhappily. Are you blaming me? All these years you were in prison, I took care of your parents and supported the family. I don't expect you to be grateful. But my parents are old and just want to enjoy their grandchildren. I just wanted to fulfill their wish, so that's how Ryan and the others came about. Can't you even be understanding and tolerant about that? He spoke lightly of his sacrifices, listing my faults. But he never mentioned his promises. It was as if I was the one who had done wrong. I looked up, forcing the tears back into my eyes. I was born into a family that patriarchal family values. Kyle Fuller pursued me relentlessly, telling me that I deserved to be loved. I quickly fell for him. To repay and protect that love, I quit my high-paying job and started a business with him. He said he didn't like flattery, so I was responsible for external marketing, while he handled internal management. To get business, I often stayed up late working on proposals, and several times I drank until I had a perforated stomach. I even had 2 miscarriages. After 3 years, the company was finally on track, and we got married. But on our wedding day, just after we got our marriage license, the company was exposed for tax issues. My husband's parents knelt on the ground and begged me, Chelsea Moore, Kyle Fuller can't go to jail. He's the only son in the Fuller family or 3 generations. If he has a criminal record, he's finished. You 2 founded the company together. Just say it was your decision. You're a girl, so even if you have a criminal record, The Fuller family won't look down on you. Please, save Kyle Fuller, okay? Kyle Fuller held my hand, scolding his parents, "Don't force Chelsea more, she's my everything. I will respect all her decisions." With tears in his eyes, he promised me, "Honey, if you're willing to sacrifice for me, I swear I will never let you down in this life. If I break this oath, may I die a horrible death." Under their combined pressure, I took the blame and went to prison in place of Kyle Fuller. For 10 years, I suffered all kinds of torture in prison. Reuniting with Kyle Fuller after my release was my only motivation for actively reforming. But in the end, his so-called promises were worthless. Even mentioning them felt like a sin. I had once braved fire and water for love, but now it seemed like nothing more than a moth flying into a flame. I forced myself to speak, "Give them some money, and we'll never see them again, or we'll get a divorce." Hearing this, my husband's parents, who had just been full of guilt and helplessness, turned dark. "Impossible! We finally have grandsons. What right do you, unable to bear children, have to drive them away?" I stared at Kyle Fuller. After all, it was an obsession of 10 years. I wanted to give him a chance, and myself a chance. Perhaps he hadn't expected my attitude to be so firm. Kyle Fuller's face turned extremely ugly. His brow furrowed. "Chelsea Moore, do you have to be like this? On what should be a day of reconciliation, do you have to personally ruin our marriage?" Seeing my expressionless face, he continued, "You've just been released from prison, maybe you can't accept reality yet. I won't take your nonsense seriously right now. I'll give you time to adjust, but Chelsea Moore, my patience is limited." I almost laughed. It was clear he was the one who had cheated, yet he was now trying to make me pay for his mistakes, and now he's pretending to be generous and give me a chance? How ridiculous. I didn't bother arguing with him anymore and turned to leave. Since this was no longer my home, there was no need for me to force myself to fit in. Just as I reached the door, a Rolls-Royce stopped in front of me. Lisa Stone, the boss lady I knew in prison, appeared. She was a generous person. She had been released yesterday, one day earlier than me. "Girl, I was thinking of picking you up today, but I missed you. I guessed you'd come to the Fullers. Let me tell you, this husband of yours isn't the devoted lover you described. While you were in prison, he had 6 kids with a shameless woman. Even pigs aren't that productive." Lisa Stone, who had also been betrayed by her husband, was indignant and wanted to rush in and tear Kyle Fuller apart. She pulled out a stack of documents, fuming so hard it looked like smoke was coming out of her nostrils. "A scumbag like this should be drowned in a pig cage." I followed her gaze. The documents clearly recorded Kyle Fuller accompanying Annabelle Miller to prenatal checkups and births. 10 years, 6 children, the oldest 11, the youngest only 6 months old. According to the timeline, Kyle Fuller had already cheated on me before we even got married. The documents also included 7 large insurance policies worth millions, 7 villas, and various transfer records. And at the end of the file, the wedding photos of Kyle Fuller and Annabelle Miller pierced my eyes deeply. The 8 of them, along with my husband's parents, and even my parents, were smiling so brightly. I took the blame for him, carried the stigma, and willingly gave up my freedom only to end up as an outsider, with nothing. Closing the file, my heart was ashen, and I finally made up my mind. Lisa Stone helped me reopen the case. Also, I agreed to go to Southeast Asia with you. Lisa Stone was an entrepreneur who had been imprisoned for excessive self-defense. In prison, she had repeatedly tried to recruit me. Unfortunately, at that time, my heart and eyes were only on Kyle Fuller. Now that I suddenly woke up, she could only be happy. That's how it should be. Men, especially scumbags, are the most useless waste. On the day of my younger brother's wedding, Annabelle Miller and her 6 children all came. She wore a red-fitted evening gown and looked radiant, not at all like someone who had given birth to 6 children. The children were all wearing tuxedos. The boys were almost miniature versions of Kyle Fuller, and the girls looked 9 parts like Annabelle Miller. Kyle Fuller was also wearing a navy blue tuxedo today, which complemented Annabelle Miller and the children's outfits. I smiled bitterly to myself. Kyle Fuller used to be very resistant to tuxedos. Now I realized that it wasn't that he didn't like them. He just didn't want to wear matching outfits with me. My husband's parents surrounded the children, their eyes full of love. Afraid they would stumble, they carefully reminded them, sweating but still enjoying themselves. Annabelle Miller handed younger brother a debit card. There's $990,000 on the card. I wish you and your sister-in-law a long and happy life. My mother's eyes lit up, and she hurriedly took it for younger brother. You're so generous, no wonder you gave birth to 6 children for the Fuller family. My mother glanced at me. Unlike some people, even blood relatives, only gave a gift card/cash gift envelope with $8,888 and said it was for good luck. What a cheapskate. Younger brother took the money out of the gift card/cash gift envelope in front of me and threw the envelope on the ground, stomping on it. This little bit of money. Who are you looking down on? Seeing their behavior, my heart turned ice cold. Although it was only $8,888, it was what I had secretly saved little by working for others in prison. Apart from that, I had less than $100 left. I frowned and said nothing. The oldest little boy suddenly ran up to me, stared at me for a full minute, and sneered, "You're that woman who went to jail? You're so ugly, and you're trying to steal my dad. Shameless!" Turning his head, he waved to the other children. "Come look, this is the bad woman who made our classmates laugh at us for being illegitimate children." Annabelle Miller squatted down and covered the boy's mouth. "Ryan, don't talk nonsense. Apologize to your aunt." She scolded the child like that, but there was no apology in her expression. This aroused the protective instincts of my husband's parents, who began to criticize me without saying a word. Kyle Fuller, who was greeting people, heard the commotion and walked over. He touched Ryan Fuller's head, his face full of heartache. "It's Daddy's fault for making your classmates laugh at you. But from now on, legally, Aunt Chelsea Moore will be your mother, and no classmate will dare to say you are illegitimate children again." A boy slightly smaller than Ryan Fuller burst into tears. My husband's parents immediately hugged him, calling him darling. "What's wrong? Grandma's precious Ethan? Where does it hurt?" Ethan Fuller sobbed, pointing at me. "The teacher said people who go to jail are bad. I don't want a bad woman to be my mom. I want my own mom." As soon as Ethan Fuller cried, the other younger children started crying too. The scene was filled with crying, very lively. My husband's parents coaxed one after another, busy as could be. "Don't cry, my precious grandson. The bad woman won't be my precious grandson's mom, grandpa and grandma promise." The eldest grandson, Ryan Fuller, glanced at me provocatively, pretending to be sad. He sniffled and squeezed out a few tears. Ryan heard people say that Mom hasn't been able to officially become the lady of the Fuller family all these years because Dad doesn't agree. My husband's parents suddenly realized and glared at Kyle Fuller. "Kyle Fuller, say something. If my precious grandson cries until his throat is hoarse, I'll fight you to the death." Kyle Fuller exchanged a glance with me, pretending to be in a difficult position. After hesitating for a moment, he finally said, "Don't cry. Daddy will give you the result you want. Boys don't cry easily. You have to set a good example for your younger siblings." As soon as he said this, it was like a tranquilizer, and the children immediately quieted down. Annabelle Miller, on the other hand, was moved to tears. "Kyle Fuller, are you serious? Am I dreaming? Kyle Fuller subconsciously looked at me, silent. Ethan Fuller suddenly rushed towards me, waving his fists and shouting, "Kill the bad woman. I told you to steal my dad. Kill you." The child was not yet 9 years old, but he weighed a full 180 pounds. When he pounced like that, it felt like Mount Tai was crashing down on me. I subconsciously dodged to the side. He lunged forward, crashing heavily into the wall, and blood immediately flowed from his nose, followed by earth-shattering crying. "Baby!" Annabelle Miller screamed, then glared at me. "Ms. Moore, I know that I've been with Kyle Fuller all these years, taking your place and bearing children for him, which makes you uncomfortable. If you have any dissatisfaction, come at me. Ethan is just a child. Please don't target him." I was speechless. Just as I was about to speak, slap. Kyle Fuller slapped me. "I thought you just needed time to adjust after being released from prison, but you actually attacked a child." Kyle Fuller used all his strength. My face was turned to the side, and my mouth was full of the taste of blood. His face was livid, and his eyes were cold. I said, "Ryan and his 5 siblings are the future of the Fuller family, the little masters of the Fuller family. And you, a good-for-nothing whose parents have to be supported by me, what right do you have to attack them?" 3-year-old Tiffany Fuller ran over, sobbing, hugged Kyle Fuller's leg, and whined sweetly. "Daddy, don't be angry. Tiffany will help you hit the bad woman." As she spoke, the little girl raised her fist to threaten me. Kyle Fuller picked her up and kissed her on the face. "Daddy's little cotton-padded jacket, hitting people is a dirty job that princesses shouldn't do." As he spoke, he signaled Annabelle Miller to take the children, and the 8 of them walked out. My husband's parents also hurriedly followed, not forgetting to spit back, "Tui, you ungrateful, shameless slut." After they left, my parents' faces immediately darkened. "You ruined a perfectly good wedding. You might as well have stayed in prison for the rest of your life, saving us from you causing trouble." My younger brother was even more angry, as if I was the one who had ruined his wedding. He rolled up his sleeves and punched and kicked me. "Bitch! Why don't you go die?" As he spoke, he dragged me out by the hair. The strength between men and women was already vastly different, and the more I resisted, the more injured I became. Kyle Fuller and the others, hearing the commotion, stopped. The children clapped and cheered. "Daddy, look, the bad woman has been beaten down. Uncle is so awesome, Uncle is a hero." My husband's parents echoed the ignorant children. "The babies are so amazing, they can tell the difference between bad people and heroes." My head was buzzing, my body was covered in pain, and everyone around me watched as if they were watching a show. Kyle Fuller's cold gaze was like a curved knife piercing my already bloody heart. Seeing that younger brother had no intention of stopping, I curled up into a ball and closed my eyes in despair. Hatred surged like a tide. Just then, the door slowly opened. A familiar and cheerful voice rang out, "Who gave you the nerve to touch her?" Hearing this, the room fell silent. Seeing my disheveled appearance, Lisa's tone was trembling with anger. "You really are. You should stay away from these animal-like relatives, but you wouldn't listen and had to come back and get hurt." She carefully helped me up, her angry eyes sweeping across the room. "A gentleman takes revenge. 10 years is not too late. Girl, let's go." I leaned weakly on her, staggering out. But someone grabbed my wrist. It was Kyle Fuller. He held Tiffany Fuller in one arm and gripped me tightly with the other, his tone cold. "You're still a Fuller family wife. Where are you going?" "She's your wife, so what's that woman next to you? The mistress?" Lisa's tone was blunt, confronting Kyle Fuller head-on. The latter's already ugly face turned even more livid, and he put down the child in his arms. As soon as the little girl landed, she pushed me with her hands, her eyes red. "My mommy is not a mistress. You are. You bad woman. Kyle Fuller patted her head with pity and coaxed her softly. Ignoring Lisa Stone's gaze, he questioned me. Annabelle Miller endured the pain of childbirth for you, a mistress? Is that how you describe her to outsiders? Chelsea Moore, do you have no heart? Did your gratitude get eaten by dogs? One can only laugh when rendered utterly speechless. I couldn't help but sneer. So, you mean I should thank her for letting me become a mother painlessly? Otherwise, I'd be a woman without children and would die alone? Before Kyle Fuller could speak, Annabelle Miller hurriedly explained, Sister, don't say that, it was my choice. Sister? I rubbed my aching temples and glanced at my parents, who had unkind expressions. I don't remember my parents having another daughter. My father clutched his heart and reached out to hit me again, but was stopped by Lisa Stone's bodyguard. He couldn't move, but his mouth didn't spare me. You ungrateful wretch! If I had a good daughter like Annabelle Miller, I would be overjoyed. I wouldn't have to suffer this now. It was pointless to argue. I tugged on Lisa Stone's sleeve. It's useless to say more. Let's go. Kyle Fuller squeezed my hand harder and harder. A piercing pain struck, and just before I completely lost patience, he softened his tone. Then what exactly do you want? The man in a suit looked like an elite, reprimanding me helplessly, as if I was the one being unreasonable. There is none so blind as those who will not see. I closed my eyes, endured the pain, and forcefully broke free of his hand. When I opened my eyes again, meeting his volcanic gaze, I suddenly calmed down. If you don't agree to a divorce, we'll go through legal channels. I paused and continued, also, I will take back everything that should belong to me. I will set everything right. I will never foolishly take the blame or sacrifice myself for unworthy people again. Doubt and panic clouded Kyle Fuller's brow, and he subconsciously took a step closer to me. What do you mean? What do you mean by everything that belongs to you? Are you trying to divide the property with me? I looked at him expressionlessly. Ryan Fuller, who didn't know when he had stood next to Kyle Fuller, looked up at him and asked, Dad, didn't you say that your property belongs to the six of us? Why do you want to give it to this bad woman? Kyle Fuller frowned and said nothing. Seeing that their grandson was sad, my husband's parents immediately coaxed him. No, Dad's property belongs to the babies. It won't be given to other irrelevant people. After saying that, they glared at me fiercely. Once you're divorced, you're just a used item and you've been to jail. Who would want you? Stay in the Fuller family, and we can still give you a bite to eat, so you don't starve to death. You should be thanking God. Their ugly faces completely tore through the veil of pretense, and every pore on their faces exuded the stench of selfishness. The last string in my heart snapped, and I retorted, You'll all reap what you sow. You'll find out soon enough. As soon as I finished speaking, officials in court uniforms appeared at the door. Kyle Fuller, you are suspected of a 10-year-old tax evasion case. This is a court summons. Please cooperate with the investigation and stay in New Haven pending the investigation. You are not allowed to leave New Haven. Kyle Fuller was stunned. There must be a mistake. Wasn't the 10-year-old case already investigated? He subconsciously glanced at me out of the corner of his eye. Even the person who committed the crime has already been released from prison. My mother-in-law turned pale with fright and hurriedly echoed, Yes, yes. The person who committed the crime is Chelsea Moore. If you want to find someone, find her. Our Kyle Fuller is innocent. The law enforcement officers had seen all kinds of people, and they simply handed the summons to Kyle Fuller without any emotion, and then turned to leave. Before the people from the court had gone far, the scene immediately became lively. What's going on? A 10-year-old tax evasion case? Did President Fuller commit a crime? I heard before that the original wife who was beaten was sentenced to 10 years for tax evasion and other crimes. Holy crap! Could she have been taking the fall? No wonder she was in jail for 10 years, and President Fuller clearly has a bunch of kids with someone else, but he refuses to divorce her. He must be afraid of the case being reopened? Shoo! Don't say anything. What if it's a misunderstanding? Be careful of being hated by the Fuller Corporation. You'll be in trouble. Hearing the discussions in the room, Kyle Fuller clenched his fists and glared at me, gritting his teeth. Did you do this? I shrugged. I said, I will take back everything that belongs to me. The first step is my innocence. Kyle Fuller's forehead veins bulged, and he turned to shout at younger brother. Tell all the irrelevant people to leave. Younger brother was shouted at and was about to carry out the order subconsciously. Sister-in-law's eyes turned red. Are you crazy? This is our wedding. If you dare to interrupt it, we'll get a divorce. My parents' faces were also very bad, but they didn't dare to get angry at Kyle Fuller, so they had to carefully persuade him. Kyle Fuller, after all, this is your younger brother's lifelong event. Look, why don't you wait until the wedding is over before talking about anything else? The sudden accident made everyone at the scene look at each other, not knowing whether to stay or leave. Kyle Fuller stared at me, but said to younger brother and sister-in-law, dismiss it now. Whatever compensation you want, just name it. Sister-in-law wanted to say something else, but was stopped by younger brother and my parents. It's just a ceremony, you can have as many as you want later. They hurriedly drove away the guests who had come to the wedding banquet. Originally, I wanted to leave, but seeing this dramatic scene, I had the thought of continuing to watch the show. A quarter of an hour later, all the guests were gone. The anger that Kyle Fuller had been suppressing for a long time finally erupted, and he kicked the chair next to him angrily. With a bang, the chair fell to the ground. The children were frightened and burst into tears. Kyle Fuller gave a cold glare, and Annabelle Miller immediately squatted down to coax the children, stopping them from crying. After venting, he suddenly asked me, certainly, you want to use this to threaten me? To make me break off relations with the children? Before I could answer, he said to himself again, it's impossible to break off relations, but I can transfer half of the company's shares to you to compensate you for the suffering you've endured in prison these years. When he said this, the expression on his face was quite solemn, as if he had made a major decision. The company was founded by us together, and we each owned half of the shares before we got married. 10 years ago, I took the blame for him, and before going to prison, I transferred all my shares to him. Now, even if he transferred half of the shares to me, it would only be returning them. But from his mouth, it sounded like he was reluctantly giving up something, letting me take advantage of him. Annabelle Miller, who was coaxing the children, looked uneasy, her eyes locked on me. If looks could kill, I would probably be riddled with holes by now. Amidst their scheming gazes, I said lightly, I don't need it. Because what I want is for Kyle Fuller to pay the price. As for the shares, I have my own way to take them back legitimately. The composure that Kyle Fuller had been feigning could no longer be maintained. Don't be ungrateful. As if thinking of something, he relaxed again and sneered disdainfully. Reopen the case? Do you think it's so easy to reopen the case? The things from 10 years ago have long disappeared. What are you going to use to reopen the case? The panic that he had initially felt upon hearing the news had subsided, and he was increasingly certain that I was using this to threaten him. But he didn't know that the evidence could be destroyed, but people's memories wouldn't. Before going to prison, I had spent 3 sleepless nights investigating all the accounts that Kyle Fuller had hidden. Kyle Fuller used various means to evade taxes, hide profits, forge invoices, fake trades, and even engaged in smuggling. It was precisely because I knew that he hadn't been framed that I willingly pleaded guilty. During my 10 years in prison, those shocking pieces of evidence would repeatedly flash through my mind every time I woke up in the middle of the night. So, even if he had destroyed all the evidence now, as long as I wanted to, I could restore the trajectory of his crimes. If the court investigated based on the clues I provided, he would have nowhere to hide. Unfortunately, perhaps he had always underestimated me. He thought I was just a tool that could be used and discarded at will, so he trampled on me wantonly. Since that's the case, I'll let him flounder for a while longer. I'll treat it as the love between a husband and wife. Kyle Fuller stared at me intently, seemingly extremely insistent on getting a definite answer. I raised my eyebrows and followed his lead. You're right, I'm just grasping at straws in my desperation. The show should end here, and I had no intention of continuing to watch. Just as I was about to leave, Kyle Fuller panicked. His voice even trembled slightly. Chelsea Moore, we've been married for 10 years. What trump card do you have up your sleeve? He took a step closer, and I took a step back. Until I had nowhere left to retreat, I sighed and retorted with his own words. Didn't you say all the information was destroyed? Where would I get a trump card? His voice rose several decibels again. Impossible. If you didn't have a trump card, you wouldn't be so calm. People are strange. He was the one who said I couldn't win the case. But when I answered according to his words, he didn't believe it. But I didn't care whether he believed it or not. Lisa Stone. As soon as I spoke, Lisa Stone immediately understood. The bodyguard stepped forward to block between Kyle Fuller and me. I was able to escape, and went out and got into the car without looking back. The moment the car door closed, the sound of Kyle Fuller and Annabelle Miller arguing came. Kyle, don't be fooled by her. What ability does a woman who has just been released from prison after serving 10 years have to reopen the case? I think she's just threatening you. What do you know? She used to be a well-known strong woman, someone no one dared to provoke before she went to prison. If she didn't have a trump card, she would never easily ask to reopen the case. If it weren't for loving me, she wouldn't have. What do you mean? I worked so hard to give you 6 children. Are you thinking of her now? Do you want to abandon us and your children? Shut up. Then, the child. Wren's cries and screams rose and fell. As the car gradually drove away, Lisa Stone slapped her thigh. Girl, congratulations on getting out of the sea of misery. After saying that, she tentatively asked me, are you okay? After all, 10 years of obsession. Don't worry, I won't laugh at you if you can't let go. I shook my head and smiled bitterly. Now I only have hatred for him. I hate Kyle Fuller's false affection. I hate his deception from beginning to end. But it doesn't matter, I will repay him double for the sins I have suffered. After leaving the Fuller Corporation, I went to the court and revealed all the clues I knew without reservation. At the same time, I filed for divorce. Since the amount involved in the tax evasion crime was relatively large, and Kyle Fuller is now the CEO of a listed company, the court specially set up a special task force to investigate the case. The task force was extremely efficient. Soon, Kyle Fuller was arrested on suspicion of tax evasion. When law enforcement officers came to the door, my parents and younger brother were asking for money at the Fullers. Younger brother's face was very ugly, and he no longer had the flattery he used to have towards Kyle Fuller. Brother-in-law, you messed up my wedding. When will you give me the promised compensation? For your little matter, we ended the wedding banquet early, and my wife and her parents lost all face. We don't want much, $5 million, and this matter will be over. Recently, the court has been taking big actions, sending people to Fuller Corporation several times to investigate. The media rushed to report, and Fuller Corporation's stock price plummeted upon hearing the news. Younger brother called my parents after receiving the news. After discussion, they decided to ask for $5 million. After all, the Fuller Corporation is now in turmoil, and if they ask for too much, Kyle Fuller might turn against them. But what they didn't expect was that Kyle Fuller never thought of G.I. being a penny. He didn't even give them a look and directly issued an eviction order. When did I promise? Over the years, you have eaten and drank mine, and now that I am in a little trouble, you are so anxious to add fuel to the fire? Get out before I get angry. Otherwise, don't blame me for asking people to kick you out. Originally, Kyle Fuller felt a little guilty about me taking the blame for him and going to jail, so for the past 10 years, he had almost given my family whatever they wanted. But as soon as I was released from prison, I insisted on getting a divorce and filed a retrial, which made him overwhelmed. Kyle Fuller's little guilt had long since vanished. Younger brother and my parents asking for money at this time would only make him irritable and disgusted. My father was also annoyed. Kyle Fuller had always been polite to them, but now his attitude was so bad. He slammed the table. This is outrageous. Is this how you talk to your father-in-law? Don't forget, my daughter took the blame for you and spent 10 years in jail. If it weren't for her, you might be. Before he could finish speaking, Kyle Fuller stood up abruptly and interrupted him. Your daughter, your daughter. Do you even have the nerve to say that? Don't you have any idea how you treated her? At the beginning of our acquaintance, Kyle Fuller might have been sincere to me. At that time, he had quite a few opinions about my parents, and often hugged me and promised, Chelsea Moore, don't worry, when we have a baby in the future, I will never treat our child like your parents. It's just that later, perhaps because of aligned interests, or perhaps his feelings for me changed, after I went to jail, they became a harmonious family instead. Now that they have torn their faces again because of interests, the former disgust surged up again. Due to disagreements, my father took action in anger. Kyle Fuller's children popped out from nowhere, and each of them swung their fists at my fave. R and the others. Bad guys. How dare you hit our daddy? Beat you to death. My mother was punched a few times in the face and screamed in protest, you brat. Ill-mannered bastards. Younger brother was also merciless and started fighting with the children for real. The house was filled with cries. Annabelle Miller, who heard the noise, rushed forward to break up the fight while calling security. Ah! A moment later, Annabelle Miller was accidentally pushed down the stairs. She clutched her stomach and cried in pain, with blood slowly flowing out from under her. The scene was in chaos. A few minutes later, Annabelle Miller got into an ambulance. My parents and younger brother were also taken away by the police. And Kyle Fuller was taken away by court law enforcement officers. In the face of conclusive evidence, Kyle Fuller was unable to argue. He slumped wearily on the back of the interrogation room chair. I won't admit anything until I see my wife. Seeing the doubt between the interrogator's eyebrows, he opened his lips again, his voice low. It's Chelsea Moore. When I arrived at the court, Kyle Fuller had already been isolated and guarded separately. Seeing me coming, he stood up suddenly, his eyes faintly sparkling. Chelsea, you are still willing to see me. He had stubble on his face and looked quite embarrassed after not seeing him for a few days. Like this. He touched his stubble. You won't dislike me, will you? It's mainly because there are no conditions here for me to shave for the time being. As he said that, he seemed a little sad. I know, you hate me having a beard the most. The memories of the dead seemed to suddenly attack him. His face was full of nostalgia. But I felt ironic. He used me as a tool, letting me go to jail for him, while he was carefree and had many children outside. Now he remembers the past? But now that things have reached this point, what's the use of mentioning these meaningless little things? It's just adding tea. Oh, the joke. It's okay. I pulled out a chair and sat down. Tell me, what do you want me here for? He looked at me affectionately. I just want to see you. I didn't respond to his false affection, but took out a piece of A4 paper and placed it on the table. Since you have nothing to say, then I happen to have something to say. This is the divorce agreement. It's best if you sign it. If you don't sign it, the divorce lawsuit has been accepted. When he saw the divorce agreement, he seemed to have suffered a huge blow, clenching his fists tightly but not daring to get angry. Does it have to come to this? I didn't reply to him and got up to leave. It would be best if he was willing to sign. If he wasn't willing to sign, it would just be a little more troublesome and take a little more effort. What I didn't expect was, before I could walk out of the courthouse gate, a staff member caught up with me and handed me the divorce agreement signed by Kyle Fuller. I immediately called Lisa Stone. The matter is over. The plan to venture into Southeast Asia can be brought forward. I was born in New Haven and grew up in New Haven. But in the end, there is nothing here worth missing. My lover betrayed me, and my relatives stabbed me in the back. Since this is the case, why not start over in another place? Lisa Stone moved very quickly. That night, we boarded a plane to Southeast Asia. 3 years later, I was invited by the New Haven Finance Channel to return to my hometown as one of the nation's top 10 outstanding female entrepreneurs. Encountered the wrong person, 10 years of unjust imprisonment, but still able to achieve great things. My story was packaged as an annual inspirational case and was widely reported. At the end of the interview, a pair of ragged old people stopped me. "Daughter, that's great, you're finally back." A stone stirred up 1,000 waves. The media present all focused their cameras on them. Under the camera, they cried bitterly, "We wore Ked so hard to raise you, but you suddenly disappeared. Fortunately, we found you." I quietly watched them perform. In the 3 years since I left, younger brother became addicted to gambling, was set up by someone in a scam, and lost all of his family property. His legs were also broken, and now he is a useless person who cannot take care of himself. And my parents, who had been well supported by Kyle Fuller for 10 years, could only live by begging once they were down and out. They thought about finding me, but I had already gone abroad. They searched everywhere but couldn't find me, so they went to the Fullers. Kyle Fuller went to jail, all of the Fuller family's property was confiscated, and Annabelle Miller took the opportunity to run away with the money and a gangster. Several children were kicked out of school and could only rely on their husbands' parents to work for others to make a living. In short, these old acquaintances are now living very miserably. So my parents' sadness also seemed sincere. But what they didn't expect was that a young reporter in the crowd glared at them. As far as I know, Ms. Moore was wrongly imprisoned for 10 years, and you can't escape the blame. In addition, you also condoned the scumbag's affair and were as close as family to the mistress's family. What kind of parents are you to have the nerve to cry in front of Ms. Moore? The two people's sadness stopped abruptly, and just as they were about to refute, a barrage of questions poured towards them. The assistant was very excited. "Ms. Moore, I thought you would be targeted. These reporters are still very good. They checked everything clearly before they came." I smiled, avoided the crowd and got into the car. "Chow Wang, give them each $500 a month. The grace of raising me is now completely repaid."